Good evening, everyone. This is a public meeting of the Milton Zoning Board of Appeals in connection with the 40B application involving 648 to 652 Canton Avenue in Milton. As everyone knows, we closed the public hearing on March 22nd. We have 40 days from that date to prepare and sign and file with the town clerk. Well, prepare and sign a decision one way or the other with respect to this application. We've had a session where we talked about generally about the project and how we might go about dealing with the various issues that have been presented to us. And so we're back here tonight to do just that. Given the time constraints that we're operating under, I've given this a lot of thought over the last few days. It seems to me that we want to really get right to the heart of the matter and first discuss whether or not to approve this application. And depending on how that goes, we would move on then to, it seems to me, waivers next, if we were to grant the comprehensive permit and have that followed by the imposition of conditions. I know that Judy Barrett has been working assiduously and beginning to draft potential conditions in the event that the board voted to approve this application. And her efforts are much appreciated in that regard. So if that makes sense to do that, to sort of talk first about whether we're going to approve, and second, if we're going to approve, what waivers we are willing or not willing to grant, and then maybe we can move on to conditions, although we might not be able to get there tonight. Maybe that's better left for Thursday. But anyway, does that make sense to you guys? Is there a way to go forward?
Yes.
I'll go first because, like I said, I've kind of been agonizing over this for the last few days. And I've gone back and forth on how I think that this should come out. But and there was a time in my thinking, I guess, when I thought that I would vote in favor of denying this permit, notwithstanding the fact that I'm very familiar with how difficult it would be to sustain such a conclusion at the Housing Appeals Committee in court after what would likely be an adverse decision at the Housing Appeals Committee. I've also thought about how we might approve it and what conditions we might do might impose to ameliorate some of the serious impacts that will result from going forward with this project. And I guess that the one thing that really crystallized things in my mind was the recognition that if we were to deny this application, and we were, as is very likely the case, overturned in that decision, then we don't get a chance to do a do-over in that circumstance. We don't get a chance to impose helpful conditions and restrictions with respect to this project. And I think it's that reality that sort of makes me lean toward approving this project and then going on to carefully think about some of the modifications that we've been asked, some of the sort of the dispensation from some of the local bylaws and provisions that we've been asked to approve and grant. And then from there go on to specific conditions, many of which would be designed, I think, once we get a chance to talk about it, to ameliorate the issues that are associated with the impact to groundwater and the impact of groundwater and water generally on neighboring properties, which I think is to me is at least the overriding concern about the proposed project. So that's sort of my thinking that somewhat reluctantly, I think I would be inclined to vote in favor of granting a comprehensive permit with very careful conditions, with careful consideration to some of the more significant waivers that have been requested. But that's sort of the way I lean right now. And delighted to hear from Ted and Mike on your thoughts on this.
Well, I guess I would like to talk about that more. I did think about, some potential conditions, went through all the ones that I suggested, ones that we had been given. And in addition to that, went through 3 or 4 other prior decisions on 40B cases in which there were conditions listed. There are obviously still, huge water issues, groundwater issues, and issues relating to the just huge amount of fill to be added. And one of the issues relating to that is I'm not sure that there was ever anything resolved about dealing with runoff during the construction period when I guess the level of the fill and the grade would be changing, pretty much on a daily basis as it was put in there, and some of it compacted, maybe some of it not. I'm not sure exactly how it would progress, but before infiltration systems were installed and the grade is changing, if there are storms, what happens at that point, and what kind of situation could be presented in that case, as well as all of the other suggested conditions for relating to groundwater issues, such as retaining an independent consultant to do an analysis both before and then throughout the course of construction, and periodic testing of soils, and additional testing of soils, posting bonds for various things like repair and maintenance, and water damage to abutters, damage to Canton Avenue and other roads. Monitoring wells have been suggested, testing hydraulic conductivity, obviously sharing data regarding the groundwater mounting analysis with any independent consultant, compliance with the Conservation Commission. I mean, there are a lot of conditions that could be imposed, and again, there are conditions raised, I think, by the tremendous amount of fill as well. Safety conditions in terms of runoff during that period, in addition to the tremendous disturbance to neighbors and potential traffic issues and safety issues, out on Canton Avenue and near the site, with all the semi-trailer loads coming in and off the property. And, I mean, all of this really, being caused by the size of the project, and which I think we all talked about last time was, too big for the site. I mean, so I guess I'd like to discuss that a little bit more, because I hear what you're saying, and that's the question that I raised last week about, how do you get conditions imposed if you, deny a permit and then it is reversed on appeal. So, I do have that on my mind, but I guess I'd like to talk about it a little bit more. I mean, we could have 50 pages of conditions for all the ones that I saw when I was going through these various sources. So anyway, Mike, do you?
Yeah, I mean, Ted, I share your frustration. I mean, going through this, I feel like this project poses a grave threat to the neighborhood. I don't know how to condition it. Honestly, I really don't know how to condition it without leaving the ultimate determination in the hands of somebody else who does not have the adjudicative powers that we do. And there's no way to monitor what decisions are made and what criteria are being judged. And that's what I'm struggling with. I think that this is a project that is not, it's not a project that fits the site. It's, they're adding land to the land that's there in order to build a project on it. And I don't see how it fits. I based on the evidence in the record, there are lots of unanswered questions. And I think those questions need to be answered in whatever conditions we come up with. And I don't know if we have the tools to do that. I think we should try. I think that the risk of the Housing Appeals Committee reversing our decision and remanding it with an instruction to just grant the comprehensive permit as applied for could be even graver than what we could come up with ourselves. But I got to admit, I really am at a loss as to how we're going to condition this based on the evidence that we have. I think that's our task, is to try to do that. And I think it's going to be a lot of hard work. I don't see how we can do it in the time that we still have left before us, particularly given that next week is not going to be workable for us to have meetings. Ted, I think that's what you're saying. Brian, I think that's what you're saying as well. That's kind of where I come down on this. If we think that we can, if the conditions that have been suggested to us are good, I don't think that they're sufficient to come up with the solutions that we need to come up with. And so that's kind of where I am. You know, I think I haven't reached a decision in my own mind about how to approach this. I don't like this project as it is. I think that whatever we come up with needs to have significant conditions placed upon it. But I'm still at a loss as to how to come up with those.
So I guess let me just ask both of you. See, you're not at a point where you're even willing to commit to or vote to suggest that you would approve the project. You're still not there.
Well, I guess that's the way I came into this meeting. But I do have concern about the conditions and how much I had confidence in conditions that there wouldn't be this, devastating. It doesn't even have to be devastating. That there would not be water damage to the to abutters and down gradient homeowners caused by this project. I don't know how you can agree to to do that or to grant it based upon unknown conditions, whether you can do that or not. And I don't know that I feel comfortable doing that at this point, but I'm willing to talk about it and hear more from you, Brian, because you're, do you think we can adequately, I mean, there's no way we can fix the size of it, and the size is the source of the problems. I mean, it's the source of adding all of this artificial elevation and creating the risks that we're that we've been discussing for the last 2 or 3 months, almost exclusively of the water issues. So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to answer your question. I mean, I think that with some assistance from Judy, that we could craft a set of conditions that will go, as far as we can go in terms of dealing with the water issue. But there's no guarantee by any means that there's not going to be problems associated with this problem. I don't think there's any way we can confidently condition it where we can, rest easy at night, easy in our souls, thinking that we're not creating problems for people. I mean, I think that's just the truth. And so it really becomes an issue of whether we're kind of willing to take a bit of a calculated risk and approve the project with as strict a set of conditions as we can fashion, or whether we're willing to roll the dice in a denial where the consequences would be that, it's very likely that would be overturned. you could go to the Superior Court after the Housing Appeals Committee, but it's, as you know, Ted, it's a 30-day review. It's a difficult standard of review. Not likely to overturn hack. It happens, but it's not likely. So those are sort of the things that we're balancing here. And I think working with Judy, which I've already started to do, I think we could fashion a set of restrictions that are pretty tough, but whether they'll measure up to deal with all the issues associated with this project, I can't say that. I can't say with any degree of confidence. And that doesn't sit easy with me either. The idea that I'm approving a project that's potentially has significant impacts, on the neighborhood and on that area of town generally. We're not even talking about the issues associated with all the truck traffic in and out of there and how we're gonna condition that, which is a huge problem. I mean,
how do you condition it?
If you drive down Canton Avenue any day of the week, as I have several times this week, and I guess I'm much more attentive to the traffic than I usually am because I'm thinking about this project as I drive by. And it's like, how is this going to work? How are you going to have all these trucks in and out of here, even if we regulate hours, which is something I think that we'd probably want to do. There's traffic on that road all day long.
There's no way to do it without restricting the amount of fill, which necessarily changes the density and size of the project.
Right. Well, they need the fill to be able to deal with the groundwater issue. And so if you take away the fill, then you're changing the project. I mean, that's, I don't know exactly how that correlates, but I know it has an impact on the size and whatnot of the project. So you'd be indirectly doing that if you.
I say this without any ulterior motives or intentions, but is that something that's within our purview to do, right? Can we say, they're proposing 10x cubic yards of fill, and that's too much. As a board, we think that's too much. Can we reduce it to 2x? And as long as they can make the project work with that amount of fill, then that's one of our conditions. We understand that will change the project and the size of the project and a lot of other things about the project, but is that something that we're able to do reasonably? That seems like logically where my mind goes, but I don't know if that's something that we're allowed to do.
I'm not sure. Well, I'm not sure it's a question of whether we're allowed to do it. I'm just not sure that there's a rational basis for us to do it. Yeah. It seems like it would almost necessarily be arbitrary, on our part, and we don't have a real fix on the correlation between units and fill. We know they need fill to have separation from groundwater, but we don't know how that would affect the units. I just don't know how we would do it in kind of a rational way. It would, to me, it would almost be tantamount to a denial if we did that. But it's a tough question and a good question. Like, I just don't know that I have a reason to answer to it.
That's the problem that I keep running into, is that the biggest issue, there are a lot of issues. The biggest issues in my mind are the fill and the traffic and everything that's associated with that, the constructability, as well as the potential groundwater and stormwater issues. And we haven't been given enough evidence to form a rational basis for adjusting what the applicant has proposed. And what do you do? It's not up to us to redesign the project. And the peer reviewers and the neighbors and everybody else, nobody has given us an alternative other than what the applicant has given us. Is it possible that there's a favorable project here? Yeah, I'm sure it's possible, but we haven't seen it. We have no criteria on which to adjust what's been given to us.
Ted, your thoughts?
No, I agree with what Mike has said, and that's I'm struggling with it as well. I don't know whether I would feel comfortable, saying, in any event, that I would be willing to approve it subject to conditions without knowing what the conditions are going to be, you know, and whether I felt comfortable after talking through them that they were going to, you know, provide the necessary protection.
Understood.
And the other thing,
Judy, can
I'm
I ask
sorry.
you a question?
yeah.
Of course.
Oh, Judy.
If we said to you, Judy, give us, you know, comprehensive set of conditions, think of everything you can think of, you know, draw on all the resources you've used in other decisions. Is that something you could have to us by Thursday?
Of this week?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, I understand. See, we're not being able to do any hearings next week is really crimping us.
I mean, I can take, let me put it this way. I can certainly get down a draft of conditions that I know need to be in this permit. Are they
Okay.
going to address all of your concerns? I cannot say that.
No, I know, but if you could give us a start.
Yes, I can
And-
do that.
And maybe if you're able to, I know you've been in communications with Sean Reed, maybe if you could include in that preliminary and not complete set of conditions,
Yes.
any suggestions that he might have in terms of how we might address the water issues, which I think are paramount here. I think that would be extremely helpful to us.
We have conditions from their hydrogeologists too.
Right.
People
Right.
keep forgetting that we also have peer review testimony from a hydrogeologist. So, you know, there's conditions from both.
Right. If you could put something together for us as much as you can within reason, and I know you're busy, that we could have before us on Thursday night, I think that would advance the ball down the field. And Mike and Ted, I mean, yes, it's going to be very difficult to do this, but at the moment we have no choice but to get this done by May 2nd. The 40th day falls on the weekend, so we have till the Monday. And so we don't have a choice. We have to get it done with them. I know it's not a good time frame for us, but it's something that we have to do. I had, as you know, I had suggested to the applicant that they give us a 2-week extension, and they didn't say no forever, but they said no for now.
Well, that's kind of unfortunate. Next week is school vacation week.
Right, but that's Judy. I sent a letter today, and my answer was, we'll see, but we're not committing to any extension right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm committed to working through whatever conditions we can come up with. They're not going to be easy, and they're going to take time.
Yeah.
In the absence of the ability to do that, I think the options are pretty limited.
Well, obviously, I mean, to speak, frankly, I mean, the easy thing to do here is deny it. It's a lot less work, but I'm just not sure it's the right thing.
Well, it's in one way, I think we're saying it is the right thing, but in another way, it's got its risks.
Yeah, it's just Ted. It's just that it's so difficult to sustain that decision. I mean, it just is. Judy can speak to that, but it's just very difficult. And I just worry about what happens if we get overturned and now we have no conditions. We have nothing to deal with the water, and that would be a disaster. So we're really this is solar and curbless. I mean, we are really between a rock and a hard place here. But I think if we had the conditions with some meat on the bones and some that were specifically directed to the water issue, I think it would help the dialogue.
And another issue that I've been thinking about, and I know, that the fill is obviously going to be compacted, but, another thing I've, thought about is you got 9 feet of fill being put there, and it's got to be compacted pretty darn carefully to make sure that there aren't any post-construction, like, cracking or whatever that could arise. And so there's got to be conditions in there to protect against that as well for the occupants, obviously.
Right.
But
All right, why don't we wait and on the conditions and get whatever Judy can produce for us, and then we can go through that very specifically on Thursday night. But in the meantime, I think it would be helpful if we talked about the waiver requests and in which of the waiver requests we might not be willing to grant. I think that's something we could probably do tonight, and if we can do that, it would be great. I don't know if you guys are prepared to do that. I have a list of sort of my favorites, which I would probably be inclined not to grant. And not surprisingly, a lot of them have to do with water. And I'm happy to go through those. I don't know if you guys are ready to do that or.
Sure. I mean, I also wrote down as I was going through things, I made a list of, Judy, you've done so many of these, you probably don't need it, but I made a list of probably, most of the ones that I saw, which are a lot of proposed conditions, and some of them might very well be in your the comprehensive list, the boilerplate ones that you said you always put in, but I can go through those for whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think
we can do the
I
waivers.
think Ted, a lot of those, I mean, we would probably want Judy to incorporate a lot of the ones that she's put into prior decisions of this board, including 582. I can't have pretty exhaustive, but would be applicable to our situation as well. So there's a lot of material that we can import from other decisions, and then focus on really the very site specific stuff that relates to this project. But there's quite a bit that can be done, and I know Judy has got some specific suggested conditions that relate to some of the water issues generally. So I think we have a pretty good leg up on this Thursday night when we had clearly it won't be a final list of conditions, but I think it's important that we get to that Thursday night. We do as much of it as we can, because again, we are operating under a severe time constraint, and there's no guarantee that we're going to get any extension.
However, that said, Ted, if you've written something up already with conditions that you're concerned about or conditions that are in some of the reports that you received, if you have anything written down like in a Word document, you want to share it, I would love to get it. If you don't, that's fine.
I don't at this point, but I can get some of it in a Word document tomorrow morning and email it to you. But right now it's my chicken scratches as I was going through this stuff, so.
That's fine.
Okay, I'll try to get something to you tomorrow morning.
Yeah, and I understand if you can't. It's just always helpful to know where your heads are.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, so does it make sense to try and go through some of the waivers?
Yes.
Sure.
I don't know if you've gone through them recently or if you have any thoughts on it, but I prepare a list of from the list of requested waiver document that we received a few weeks ago, with things that I would be inclined not to grant. And I'm happy to go through my list. And if you have others that jump out at you, that would be great. So I would start on the first page of the list that we had, and there's sort of a theme to my thinking on this that will quickly, I think, emerge. So the first one is the permit for curb cuts and street sidewalk openings. I would be inclined not to grant that. I would like to leave that to the town entities who deal with those kinds of things in the ordinary course. I don't really think we had much in the way of testimony with respect to the subject of curb cuts and sidewalk openings. So my inclination would be to not waive the Milton Police Regulation bylaw relating to permits for curb cuts and street sidewalk openings. Maybe it's easier for me just to run through my list and then we can come back to them and discuss them individually.
Well, it's okay with me to do it, you know.
Okay.
I don't disagree with that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
My guess is you're not going to disagree with many of these. You may have others that you want to add, but all right. The next one is the very next one on the page, which is Milton Townways Bylaw, Chapter 8, removal of trees and stone walls. Again, I don't think that we were presented with enough information to intelligently waive those bylaws of the town. And that obviously the subject of trees is extremely sensitive to many people. And, you know, I would like to leave this to the entity in Milton that typically deals with these issues. So I would be inclined not to grant that waiver as well. The next one on my list is on the second page, the first one, which is the earth materials removal and fill. This is chapter 10, section Roman 4A. And I would be inclined not to grant that waiver and leave it to the appropriate authorities who deal with methods of removal and the like. Next one is the chapter 10 4B, the wetlands regulations. So this is part of my theme, which would be that since water is such an important issue in this case, and wetland resources are part of the concern, my thought would be to leave that section alone and let that be reviewed under that section of the Milton bylaws. My next section is
wetlands. I'm sorry, Brian, are you talking about the wetlands, local wetlands bylaw?
It's chapter 10, section 4B.
Well, that's, you're sitting in the seat of the Milton Conservation Commission for purposes of 4B.
Right, I understand, but we don't have to waive those regulations, right?
Well, I think you're asking for an appeal. But
Okay, I hear. I'm not saying that
nothing.
I'm right about all. I'm not saying I'm right about all of these, but I'm just giving you my list.
I'm not saying you should waive their standards. I'm talking about the procedure.
The procedure? What do you mean?
Who's going to review under the local wetlands bylaw if you're not stepping into that role?
I assume it would be the Conservation Commission.
But you're sitting in the role of the Conservation Commission for purposes of 40B.
Okay. So what is it? So why did they ask us for a waiver then?
Because they don't want to go to the Milton Conservation Commission under the local wetlands bylaw.
Well,
But if we don't
Okay,
waive it,
but
then
what-
they'll have to do that.
what about the permit for a curb cut? I mean, that would be,
That's departmental, I believe.
okay, so why, I mean, isn't the wetlands, aren't the wetlands regulations enforced by the Conservation Commission?
Or I'm telling you, you're sitting in the role of the Conservation Commission. So you can't send them to Concom for the local wetlands bylaw. They are going to have to go to Concom under Chapter 131, Section 40. They still have to do that.
Right. That's under the state, yeah, under the state act.
Right. They're not exempt from, you can't exempt them from that, but you can't send them to the Conservation Commission under the local wetlands bylaw. Do you have, I don't remember off the top of my head, do we have comments from the Conservation Commission on this case?
I don't recall that there were.
Tim has his hand up. Tim, I mean, you want to just speak?
Yeah, hi. I might have missed my chance earlier to get promoted. I know the pop-up box comes on. I might have had my phone down. Could I just be promoted? It might be easier.
Oh,
Yeah, sorry, Tim. I did try to promote you a couple times. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I have my phone on the table, so.
Okay. There we go.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Mhm.
So first of all, I mean, Judy's characterization is correct. You know, the Board of Appeals under 40B is like the super board for all local permits. But what I wanted to comment on is just the first couple waivers that you talked about, I think we discussed it at the last session. We had worked out a condition for the 582 project related to that, that first right-of-way waiver, that effectively kept in place all of the review and monitoring and approval and whatever functions that DPW carries out on behalf of the Board of Selectmen. It just kind of did away with the actual issuance of the permit by the select board, which I think is the primary thing that the applicant's trying to get out of. So we have that condition, all drafted up. We worked it out with DPW. We worked it out with this particular applicant. And we think it worked fairly well. The other thing is, the folks who deal with the earth materials and removal of fill bylaw is you all. It's a special permit from the Board of Appeals. So I think, to waive that, if you want to waive it, you can waive it, but I would do it kind of in a deliberate fashion about like, we want to, take a sort of a second bite at the apple, for instance, to use a common term, that, we want to continue to review this issue, under the auspices of this existing bylaw. But, at the end of the day, you'd just be, you'd be punting it to yourselves.
Okay. And that may be okay.
You're asking them to come back for another approval under a local bylaw that's not subsumed by this permit. I think you're going to have a problem.
So we're being asked, Judy, to waive all the technical requirements, specifications, and permitting procedures of this particular section of the town bylaws without any really discussion about it.
I'm not encouraging you to waive the standards. I'm simply saying you can't make them come back. I mean, a waiver you could consider. I'm not going to say the applicant will accept it. I'm just saying you could say for procedural purposes only, but the applicant is bound by the standards in the bylaw.
Okay.
That's not uncommon.
All right, then that's a good refinement. I think that's a good refinement on that. And that may be applicable in more than one circumstance here.
We're going to go over these one more time, right?
Sure, Jed. I'm just picking up the ones that I thought about. You guys may have other ones. But the next one that I jumped to was 8A, 10 section 8A. And that's enforcement. Enforcement of the bylaw and issuance of building permits. So which seems to suggest that we would be issuing the building permits.
You're not issuing the building permit.
It says building permits shall be issued pursuant to 40B.
Right, by the building inspector.
So do we put that as part of the waiver?
No, they have to meet the requirements of a building permit. That will go in the conditions in a section that deals with things they have to do in order to get a building permit.
Okay.
I think it's a little hard for you to, I think, do this without draft conditions in front of you because you can't see the architecture of the conditions, but.
Okay, I understand.
Okay. Right.
But this is helpful that we're having the discussion. So yeah, I mean, that's fine, Judy. If we can deal with that by way of conditions, that's fine with me. It's just these provisions just jumped out at me as I was reading them. The next one that I looked at was the site plan one, chapter 10, section 8D, site plan approval.
Mhm.
So I guess you'd tell me that we're sitting in the role of site plan approvers.
That's correct. It's a local bylaw.
And so I guess that as part of our approval process, we would in effect be approving the site plan for this project.
Right.
Okay. I had written okay and a question mark next to in the margin on that one. So, okay, the next one I have is chapter 21. That's on page 7. stormwater management.
I think Jess,
Yeah.
Attorney Schumer said he wasn't requesting a,
Okay, no, okay, right,
Waiver.
I get that, in margin too, but he's not requesting a waiver of that. So, but that's just under the state act that they're.
so what about the one above, the wetlands? That's not the regulations, I think that's the wetland bylaw. Is that the same thing, Judy? That we're,
No, this is the local bylaw, Ted. So he's asking us to waive the local bylaw provisions in effect to act as the Conservation Commission in connection with the local bylaw provisions, but allowing the Conservation Commission, as he must, to review the project under the state act.
The local bylaw is the bylaw that town meeting adopts. The regulations are adopted by the commission, the authority of the bylaw. So there's
Right.
more administrative detail in the regulations.
Okay.
right, so can we, I mean, are we sitting in the role of the Conservation Commission with respect to the bylaw?
Yes, you are. You are the Conservation Commission with respect to local bylaws and regulations. They will have to go to the Conservation Commission under the state act.
Okay,
But Judy, just so.
so we can not waive this then, right? We can choose not to waive this and they're going to the Conservation Commission anyway, right?
But
No?
you
Okay.
have to exercise jurisdiction under the local bylaw and the regulations. Their filing with Concom will only be under 131, section 40.
So Judy, just so I'm clear on this, and this is helpful, but what if we just said, no, we don't grant these waivers?
You'll see if they,
And so you must require with all requirements applicable for wetlands.
so now if you see, there's a difference between the procedure and the standards. If you don't want to waive any standards, they may not be happy with that anyway. My comment is about having to send them to the Conservation Commission.
Okay, I understand.
That's a different matter.
So we could just say we do not waive the provisions of the local wetland bylaw.
Not waive the standards.
Right.
Is that what you're saying, Judy?
Right.
We could say that if we wanted to. But what we can't say is we're not going to do anything about it and go back and see the Conservation Commission because we are the Conservation Commission.
Right.
Okay, got it. Let's see the next.
The same thing with the stormwater bylaws?
Yeah, it's the same
Local
issue.
bylaw.
So he's not requesting a waiver of that anyway.
Right, yeah, we just did that one. The next one on my hit list was rights of way. Which I guess is in the bailiwick of this is on page 8 of the selectmen. Local rules and regulations pertaining to rights of way. I don't exactly know what's that right they're asking us there.
Utility rights of way. So
they're asking
DPW
us to approve their utility plans.
I think these plans would still be approved by DPW at the end of the day, but the applicant would not also have to go before the select board for these.
Okay, well, we can't send it, as Judy correctly points out, we can't send them to the select board. We can either grant the waiver with respect to local rules and regulations pertaining to rights of way or not.
Well, I think Mr. Schomer said that he was looking for this to apply not only to Canton Avenue, but to Mergewood as well,
Right.
which would mean utilities. And I'm not sure that really is something that we would have to waive. Utilities can come in through the driveway, right?
I need to look at
Okay.
the I'm in the middle of trying to print something in here while I'm listening to you, and obviously I need to look at this list. I'm not being very helpful to you at this point.
So could we waive this requirement as to the applicant's property only and not Mergewood, or grant the waiver and then somehow condition the Mergewood aspect of it?
Well, I mean, we're definitely going to, well, I shouldn't say definitely. I think we have talked about conditioning any approval on the continued availability of Mergewood for emergency vehicular use, right?
Right, but what I'm saying is
No,
that we
there's-
should just make sure to include in the language of that condition, that the inclusion of utilities.
Well, there's emergency access use, but then there would be use beyond that, which is what I think they're looking for here. I don't know that you need utilities at Mergewood for emergency access by a fire truck. I don't know. But, unless there were a hydrant on it, I guess, or something.
Okay. So you think this, on page 8, you think this applies to Mergewood as well?
I have in my notes from when we were discussing this with Jesse that he said that's what they were looking for.
Okay.
So, okay. So and he says in here it's solely to the extent it would require an additional local permit from the select board. But that but there's another governmental agency that stands in the shoes of the select board for this. Judy?
I think it's the DPW, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is.
So that would be a condition?
What would be a condition, Ted?
That it would still, that the DPW would, well, no, I guess if they're waiving the,
No, they're saying that we would effectively be approving the utilities.
right. Right, okay. Well,
But they
with respect to Canton Avenue, I guess. Yeah.
Tim has his hand up. Tim?
Yeah, sorry. This is another one similar to the first one, where, and if you look in their waiver request, it basically only says the only thing we're asking for is to not have to go to the select board. We will put ourselves on the hook for whatever performance standards are in the regulations. So, if Chase looks at this and says no good, then it's no good. They've got to meet the standards in the regulations. So, this is another one where we worked out that condition for, for similar language for the 582 project. So, that's something that, it's effectively, what it's doing is acknowledging a kind of ministerial staff level review and just doing away with the formal kind of board approval. But all of the standards are still kind of, there in place for, the relevant department heads to approve or not approve.
Okay, that's helpful. Then the last one I had on my hit list was the existing permits. I'm trying to find that. You know the one I'm referring to?
Yeah, it's on page 10.
Okay.
Bottom of page 10.
What do you guys think of that one? I just was, my reactions was why would we do that? Why would we go back to the 1950s and trying to figure this out and decide to waive these things? But maybe I'm missing the mark there.
No, I agree with you. I don't think we should be waiving them.
Great.
All right, well, it seems like a lot of those then have been obviated. Some of my concerns, I guess, have been obviated with respect to the requested waivers. So you guys may have others from, I mean, that's just a few of the many requested waivers that were there. These are the ones that sort of jumped out at me, and some of them I think are going to go away. And maybe, I don't know, Judy, as part of your draft, maybe you can deal with these requested waivers.
I think some of them I can.
Informed by this discussion tonight.
Yes.
Okay. So where do we go from here?
I want to go through the I'll go through the waivers again too, because I thought we were going to just talk about conditions tonight. So that's.
You want to go through them between now and Thursday, you mean?
Yeah. I'll review them again to make sure that we're going to need it. But you didn't mention that I want to talk about.
But Deb, why don't you take the floor on conditions?
Well, I was going to give Judy in what sense? Conditions in what sense? I mean, Judy was going to do a draft of a comprehensive set of conditions, I think.
She was hoping to have that to us by Thursday, before Thursday.
What did you want me to talk about? Yeah.
Nothing. You just said, let's turn to conditions. And I thought you had something you wanted to turn to.
Well, I thought that's what we were going to talk about. Right.
Okay. Did you have any specific proposals that you'd like to make?
No, I mean, I went through the ones that seem to be, the most prominent. But I'm sure Judy will think of and have others from what was presented with respect to the water issues. I said that at the very beginning. I made a list myself, which I said I would have put in Word format and try to get to it tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of just subject matter, not the text of the conditions, but just the subject matter. But I'll go through that list now if you want.
I'm sure.
Well, it's about 3 pages.
Okay. Well, I'd like to get as much done tonight as we can. And so Judy's probably going to say, yeah, we always cover that, or we don't, or whatever. Okay.
Well, these relate to, they may not be all that Judy has, but during the construction period, sound and noise, dust control, truck traffic,
We have some recommendations from Sean Reardon around the construction management plan.
Oh, okay. Right. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. The construction management plan. Right. There wasn't a whole lot of detail on a lot of the issues in that.
Chad, one of the draft conditions I had sent to Judy, and I don't take any great pride for doing this. I probably cribbed this from somewhere else, but I had suggested this as a possibility, and I'm sure Judy can improve upon it. But it says, the applicant shall comply with all applicable state and federal requirements relating to noise from construction activities, including regulations contained at 310 CMR 710 the DEP's noise policy contained in a certain policy. The applicant shall also implement all necessary controls to ensure that vibration from construction activities does not constitute a nuisance or hazard beyond the property. Upon notification from the appropriate municipal officials, the applicant shall cease all construction activities creating noise in excess of state and federal standards and shall implement such mitigation measures as is necessary to ensure that the activity will comply with applicable state and federal requirements. So that's sort of a fairly standard condition that relates to noise, at least during the construction phase. So I think that's built into some of the stuff that I think Judy already has.
Okay.
Is that the kind of condition you had in mind?
Yeah. And you know, relating to the hours of construction, which I guess it's been suggested should correspond directly with the town bylaws.
We have that covered in the.
Right.
condition.
I've seen some of the prior, you know, decisions that has that covered. But, you know, no parking of any vehicles on Canton Avenue, Mergewood, or Holmes Avenue. You know, strict control and adherence to tree protection plan.
Mhm.
And I don't know whether it should be an opportunity for someone appropriate to observe on any days when trees are being removed. Be on site, be notified. Yeah, I talked about this before. Runoff issues arising. I don't have a draft condition for it, but you know, the period during construction when fill's being built up, but before the infiltration systems and the stormwater protection is installed, when there'll be daily changes to grade, and if you know, there could be storms that could create some runoff situations and damage during that period of time as well. Off-site snow removal, trash and refuse removal. I'm sure you have those too, Judy.
Yes, we do.
There's some that relate to, you know, other than the repair or replacement of the infiltration systems, you know, posting bonds such as damage to Canton Avenue that might be caused by all the heavy truck traffic. You know, to confirm with appropriate town departments the adequate capacity of the water, sewer, and stormwater facilities for the site. I'm sure all these are familiar to you. Liability insurance for all the contractors and subcontractors, and hiring an independent testing engineer for the infiltration systems and other. I guess maybe for the soils, periodic soil testing was suggested as well. Bond for replacement of any of the infiltration systems that needs repair or replacement or malfunctions. Let me see. Final fire department review of hydrant locations and the numbers and of the access and circular route. Well, that that would be before, I guess, final plans.
Yeah, there's these things I think you'll probably take some comfort in are really all addressed in the kind of
Yeah.
conditions, the tiers that have to be met before any activity on the site, before a building
Right.
permit, before the first
Well,
certificate
that's,
of occupancy, and et cetera.
yeah.
And I
So,
can tell you that the building inspector will want to go through this and make sure that the board is not putting conditions in the permit that relate to the building code, because that's really his jurisdiction.
right. No, I mean, I've got some more too, but a lot of them are probably covered. I just took them from, the planning board had some proposed conditions, the selectmen did. The attorney Corcoran submitted some. There were some in some of the experts' reports, and a couple other. So, well, I didn't write down some of the ones that were in some of the prior decisions, but I reviewed them.
Mhm.
And, I'll wait to see what I can send drafts of ones too, if you want me to.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
Probably the most efficient thing to do is to see what Judy, I mean, I know
Right,
she's had,
right.
I know she's had input from a lot of sources, and has her own, I'm sure, sets of conditions she's used in the past. So I guess we should see what we get and just go through them on Thursday, and then see if there's anything specifically that are not in there that we'd like to include. That might be a better use of the time.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure you're going to make it better anyway. So, I mean, I'll share with you a working draft. I have, I always appreciate input from the board. So,
Thanks
Yeah.
very much, Judy, for doing that. Thank you.
Yes, that would be helpful to us because that, yeah, so I think we need to do that on Thursday night. Hopefully Judy can get it to us, even if it's sometime on Thursday. That we can at least read it once before we get to the meeting. That would be helpful, even if it's only an hour or two beforehand. I'll try to read through it so at least we're somewhat familiar with what you've done. And, you and I have already exchanged some materials on this, so I know to some extent what you're going to have in there.
But in terms of whether to, ultimately allow or deny the permit, the critical ones I think are going to be the stormwater ones, and
Right.
Probably ones dealing with fill and other construction related issues.
Okay. Mike, anything you wanted to add to the mix?
No, I have not come up with drafts, proposed conditions. I agree with a lot of what Ted said, and I understand what Judy said, but I have nothing else to add.
And how shall I guess we went through the waivers, and Judy correctly pointed out the limitations on our authority to do that. But we may just want to revisit that again on Thursday, clean that up a little bit in terms of what waivers we can and cannot deny. I guess we can go from there. So
yeah, and I just want to underscore, I'm not encouraging you to just carte blanche accept any waivers. The only thing I'm trying to keep you from doing is inadvertently sending the applicant to some other board for some.
no, I understand, Drew. I understand completely. I mean,
I
that's what all those boards are subsumed within our sort of aegis at this point. So I understand that. And so I agree. We can't send them back because that's not what this is all about. So I get that. So trying to get if there's anything else productive we can do tonight, given the constraints. What do you guys think it's going to take for you to make a sort of final decision one way or the other on the up and down aspect of this? Is that a function of how comfortable you are with the sort of draft set of conditions that we have, and or are you at a point where you think that no matter what we put into a set of conditions that you're not going to be in favor of this of this development? I mean, you guys at that stage, or should we leave that again till Thursday?
I mean, personally speaking, I think that I'd like to see what we can come up with collectively in terms of conditions. It very well may be that we're able to come up with some conditions that will be okay in my mind. That's kind of, I think, what we need to do.
Okay. Judy, what would you think of a condition that said that before they begin construction, after they've done their site work, brought in their fill, but before they begin construction, they have to do another groundwater test to see how it is under the conditions where all that fill has been added. To do that analysis that they weren't willing to share all their information about, but to do it again, or to have someone else do it again. There's a condition preceding to the issuance of an actual building permit for any of the structures.
And what's the standard you're asking them to demonstrate?
Well, that's the tricky part, right?
I think it would have to be an independent, I mean, it wouldn't be an applicant's consultant. I think it would be an independent consultant on behalf of the town.
Right.
Like a peer review type consultant.
Yeah.
To do that analysis.
And say what? That it's okay, that it's not okay. I mean, it's Mike asked a good question.
Whether it's still in compliance with stormwater standards and other applicable requirements.
And
you're talking about another mounding analysis?
Yeah.
Another mounding.
And to opine that there's going to be no offsite impacts from.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I would want it to go more than just compliance
Yes.
with the stormwater standards, right? I would want some definite answers, such as there will be no increased stormwater runoff, there will be no impact on surrounding streams and wetlands and things like that. And frankly, I'm wondering if there's any wisdom to this, and that's taking it out of the hands of the town in terms of hiring a peer reviewer. I mean, you guys know in practice what we would do is say, all right, you pick one expert and you pick one expert, and you guys agree that that's going to be the third party independent expert. The applicant picks a side, and either the town or the neighbors or somebody picks a side, and that's the expert we end up using.
But in those two experts would then agree upon a third expert?
You'd have to agree upon a third expert. That's the way I would do it in my practice. I don't know if there's any application to that here, but
you run the risk that they never agree on anyone. I don't know. Who knows? But I like the idea of doing that groundwater mounding analysis that they can, after the dirt's all on there. And
right.
Now we're going to
what I'm nervous about is that there was such disagreement about everything having to do with the mounding analysis that we already did, right? Like nobody agreed on the right standards. No one agreed on the right criteria. No one, at the end of the day, it's just a mess of people's opinions. And right. I don't want the same, right. I don't want this whole thing to hinge on the same thing happening again.
There were 3 different models used.
Right.
Right.
So, is it like comparing apples and oranges? Well, that's one of the things we can.
Yeah, we can think about that, but I like having that as
talk about.
Leaving aside how we pick the person who does it. I like the condition that says, okay, let's do this one more time. Let's do groundwater mounding analysis once the dirt is there and see what that tells us.
The problem is that the dirt being there is part of my concern as well, right? So
well, that's right. That's right.
No, I know. But how else do we do it, Mike? Again, you can-
I think we've done it. I mean, that's what I keep coming back to is we've done this. You know, we've done it over the last 4 months. You know, that all the studies have been done, all the peer reviews, all the independent experts. I mean, it's been done, and there's really no clear consideration. I don't understand what doing it again is going to achieve. I mean, I get it. I mean, I just don't see how that. I mean, what if they find out then that the project is a complete disaster and does not meet the kind of standards that we would like it to meet? So
then they don't get a building permit.
They don't get a building permit, but then now we have all that fill in there, and
Right.
the site is unbuildable for anything else, right?
You make a good point. Okay. But you keep bringing me back to the fact that we heard, you know, we've had at least 3 sort of subsurface water experts with 3 different opinions. You know, on the one side, you have the guy they originally had and they got rid of, then they brought on somebody new. We had, you know, Scott Horsley, and he had his views. Then Tetra Tech came in at the last second and said they were cool with water. They didn't think there was going to be any problems with it, which was a bit of a surprise to me toward the end of the process. So, you know, we're left with all, as you said, Mike, with all competing and different opinions as to, you know, whether or not there'll be off-site impacts from, you know, this groundwater that's accumulating. I mean, so it was just really in a kind of, but I get your point. It's sort of hard to do a test after you put in, you know, 7 to 9 feet of dirt. Because what do you do? Like you said, what do you do if they fail or they don't meet the standards or our requirements? What do we do then? Tell them to take the dirt out? It creates a morass of problems. Anyway, I thought I'd throw it out there, but we can get to that. It was just a thought. So I guess the most productive thing we can do is to wait for Judy to give us, you know, a list of conditions, recognizing that she's doing this on sort of short notice, and go through them in detail and think about the ones that we might want to add to it or whatever. I think we need to do that. And I take it that each of you want to reserve on the ultimate issue of whether you want to even approve this project.
I do. Yeah,
Yes.
for the time being, yeah.
Okay. Judy, is there anything else you think we can cover tonight? I feel like we have covered what we have on our plate.
Well, I do too. I think we probably will have more to talk about Thursday night.
Yeah, yeah, we will. So Judy, the sooner you get that to me, the quicker I'll read it. And I think we should go through them. And I think we should be looking toward how we feel about specifics and also with an eye toward what we would add as additions. And I really think we need to, I don't know, I would like to see us come to closure on whether or not we're going to approve the project with conditions or whether we're going to just deny it. I think just from a timing standpoint, I think we've got to get there pretty soon. Okay, this has been helpful, if not disconcerting, but we'll move forward again on Thursday night.
Thank you.
Okay, all right.
Judy,
Thanks.
thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Have a-
Thanks,
have a good
Crystal.
night.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Crystal.
Bye-bye.